There have been some interesting comments by the former NSA head. I've actually got the story here. Link will be in the description as usual. Michael Hayden, basically saying that after a major attack, the U.S. is going to most likely seize even more surveillance powers. This has all been an admission that they intend to grow this program until basically you've got cameras in your home, in your car, and people rummaging through your trash to make sure you're loyal every night. This is patently 1984-ish. This goes beyond just, oh, by the way, we're spying on your email. Well, first they were taking metadata, but they weren't doing anything with it, they promised. Then it was, oh, by the way, yeah, we are using this metadata to catch people who are not related to terrorism. We're doing it through various underhanded methods, and we won't discuss exactly how. And by the way, you can't serve up a legal defense if you get blamed for any of these things, because we'll just say, well, we can't reveal where the information came from because it's classified. Then it was, oh, it's email too, and they're going after encrypted email, and they're going after file sharing, and they're monitoring all these websites. This is not a little issue, this is a big issue. I think the primary problem, and I pointed this out actually talking on here, when Bush was president, he did things that had to do with surveillance that people didn't like. The left wing protested and the right wing applauded him and said, he's keeping us safe. Now that Obama's the president, it's the opposite. The right wing protests and the left wing says, oh, but he's keeping us safe, we don't have a problem with this. I had a problem with it under Bush, and I was a Republican at the time, a marginal Republican, and I have a problem with it under Obama. Doesn't matter which party is in charge, it doesn't matter who the president is. These kind of programs, they do violate the Fourth Amendment. It's clear that they violate the Fourth Amendment. Some of the other trickery that they're using these programs for violates a great deal of non-constitutional law. And the hope is that the judicial branch would come out and actually make a statement about this and tell people, yes, this is unconstitutional. The problem being, again, I think that the judicial branch wants to avoid the issue and actively discourages taking up such claims, because anyone who's on the Supreme Court that does understand that this is blatantly unlawful is worried that somebody will pander around and get 5 of the justices to disagree and say, no, it's legal, and then there'll be a judicial precedent. I think that's the worry. That you'd have a 5-4 decision in the middle of the night to say, oh, by the way, this is all constitutional, you don't have a right to privacy if you're online, and it doesn't matter. But this is essentially an admission by the former NSA chief, and this is what's really concerning with this piece of news, that there will be more major attacks and they'll be essentially used to expand the NSA, to expand the surveillance and police state. This is sort of what happened after 9/11. Now, I am not a truther or a tinfoil hat wearing, oh, the Jews did 9/11 sort of person. I am ambivalent on the issue, but it's clear that after September 11th happened, a lot of people got together from, we're assuming, the CIA, the FBI, generally the people who would benefit from having increased surveillance and make their job easier. Some corporations probably, some lobbies probably, maybe a few bureaus, sort of got together and put pressure on the American government to say, well, the only way to keep us safe is to rummage through people's trash to make sure that they're not terrorists. And again, that's happened throughout history. Look, it's almost a little bit like the burning of the Reichstag. Oh, the commies did it. Well, we're going to crack down on the commies. And there are some comments here that are pretty funny, actually. I want it carved on my tombstone that I was not an NSA worker, along with a cross and American flag. Of course, for me, if I was doing that, there wouldn't be a cross on it, but nonetheless. This is another thing Hayden said. that Snowden, of course, Edward Snowden, the person who leaked this story in the first place, that, oh yeah, by the way, the NSA is spying on absolutely everything you do, and Clapper came out and said, oh, well, we're only doing a little bit, and then it came out more and more over time, and it turned out there was more and more surveillance with each leak, and each time they had to backtrack and sort of shut up because they realized anything they say would incriminate them. He said that Snowden didn't inform the debate, he made it more emotional. He didn't inform the debate, he started the debate. The debate never existed until Snowden leaked this information. Nobody knew that these programs existed. They knew there was an NSA. They knew they conducted surveillance. They assumed that the type of surveillance they were conducting was primarily related to foreign matters. That it was not intrusive, that it was based on, by the way, we're tapping the phone of Abdullah bin Ibn al-Shammar over there in Yemen because we think he's going to try to bomb something. Nobody had a problem with that because that's a legitimate use of surveillance. It does keep people safe. We've seen it before. We have broken up terrorist plots by tapping the phones and following around these people overseas. It has happened. Nobody has a problem with that. Every country on earth that wants to survive is going to need to do that more and more. The problem people have is that it's now blanket surveillance, number one. It's surveillance on media that you wouldn't assume that terrorists, if they were in their right mind, would be utilizing in the first place. Terrorists do not talk about their plans on Facebook if they're credible threats. If they are talking about it on Facebook, odds are they're either completely inept and by attempting to construct a bomb they're going to blow their own hands off, or they don't know what they're doing and they're not going to do anything in the first place because they're just talking shit. There are a lot of trolls online who refer to themselves as terrorists and joke about it constantly. Are these people going to start getting traced by the NSA and have everything broken into because they make a joke about, having a dirty bomb in their pants? That just doesn't make any sense. And another thing people have to realize is this. The economy's still on the skids. By the way, we still have a high national debt and deficit. We're having economic problems right now. You're going to tell me that we need to spend tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars a year monitoring email? And by the way, you already have a right to privacy with regards to mail. If I send you a letter, a federal agent or someone from the NSA can't open that letter and read it without a warrant. They can look through your mail if they've got a duly issued warrant specifically stating that it is your mail or your particular piece of mail that they want to go through. That's fine. That's acceptable within the bounds of the Constitution. It fits in with the Fourth Amendment. And warrant has been issued. It specifically states who or what it's pertaining to. It is constitutional. It's happened for hundreds of years. Nobody has a problem with that. The problem is that these FISA courts are issuing blanket warrants. They're simply saying you can check all email, all phone data, all everything related to every American citizen. Here's your warrant. There are also programs in place to allow federal authorities, without a judge signing anything, to sign their own warrants. They literally can carry around a blank piece of paper, sign themselves a warrant, and search your home. That's unconstitutional. It's not issued by a judge. It's not issued by any legal authority. It's issued by the agent themselves for little or no reason. That's unconstitutional. It's clearly unconstitutional. Anybody who's actually read the Constitution, you don't have to be a law professor or a criminal defense attorney or something to understand the Constitution. It's really not that friggin' difficult to understand. It's not a long document. It's not a really complicated document. It's a relatively short, fairly easy to understand piece of paper. You don't have to have a high reading comprehension to understand what the Constitution is talking about. Anybody can see clearly this is unconstitutional. We're wasting tens of billions of dollars on a program that probably has not helped us remain any safer. And the thing is, Hayden points out, well, if you challenge these programs, then in hindsight everything will look worse once there's a terrorist attack. Yes, it's terrible when you have a building blown up. It's terrible when a military base gets assaulted or a van full of fertilizer blows up outside a preschool. You can't stop every terrorist attack by monitoring everything online and by phone, because again, terrorists, the credible ones, primarily are not going to use such systems. And again, I pointed this out too. When this first broke, Boehner comes out and says, well, it's okay, it stopped at least 2 terrorist attacks to my knowledge. Pelosi came out several weeks later and said it stopped about half a dozen terrorist attacks. Clapper came out and said, oh, it stopped about 30 attacks or some number like that. Now, about a week ago, they came out and said, oh, it's stopped 300 attacks. The number keeps growing. It's grown since I made the last video where I mentioned this fact. It keeps growing. The reason that the number keeps growing is, number one, they're talking out their ass, and they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know how many attacks have been stopped. Number two, and most of the attacks, if any, which have been stopped, would be non-credible threats, where the FBI says, well, this person's talking about how they supported Osama. We're going to talk to them under a sock account and say, hey, we noticed that you supported Osama. We support Osama too. You want us to help build you a bomb? Here's a good target. You won't get caught. And then they give them a dud that looks real. The person has no idea what they're doing. They would never be able to build an explosive anyway. They were never going to do anything violent, but now they're being given the means and being entrapped by the FBI. And by the way, some of these people have gone free on that token. Others are rotting in jail forever because they've been entrapped, because they've been convinced, basically goaded into doing something illegal. Even though it's not really, technically I'm sure it's not illegal to take a fake explosive and attempt to detonate it, so I'm not sure how the law works on that one. But there are cases of entrapment. The police go up to some, drug rehab facility former member. Somebody used to smoke crack, and they say, hey, here's some crack rocks, you smoke them. And they smoke the crack, that's entrapment. They weren't going to smoke it unless you offered it to them and goaded them into using it in the first place. This is a stupid program. And here's Hayden's basically telling us all, and nobody seems to notice, yeah, there are going to be more major attacks, and we're going to use it as an excuse to increase the surveillance state. As though it wasn't big enough already. You play Fallout 3 and you see the Enclave iBots that are, wandering around monitoring everything. That's the world of the future, apparently. You're going to see the robots, drones flying through the streets with cameras all over them, and little dart guns or missiles or something to take out people that do anything wrong. It'll be like Britain, where you have the camera system all over Britain. Any urban area has thousands and thousands of these cameras that are monitored 24/7. You throw your gum on the sidewalk and the camera says, hey, pick that up, boy. That's not the United States I want to live in. It's not the United States that most people want to live in, I'm sure. Most people do. They do like their privacy. And they don't need to want it. It's still guaranteed to them by the Constitution. The problem is this. This program is so overarching, far-reaching, underhanded, and clearly illegal that people would rather ignore its existence and not talk about it. Because I think that admitting that, number one, it exists, and number two, it's illegal, would put people in a strange position where they feel like it's their responsibility to revolt. They don't want any sort of they don't even want to protest. Most people would rather not do anything like that. And so people see this program and they think, by God, everything's hopeless, everything's terrible, let's just be silent and hope for the best. That's not the proper response. The proper response would be protesting. The proper response would be there should be about 10 million people in D.C. right now chanting slogans at Congress telling them, get rid of the NSA entirely, simply, literally bulldoze these structures they're planning to build, get rid of the entire organization, cut the entire bureau out. That should be what people are demanding. Instead, they would rather pretend that it's okay and say, well, I don't have anything to hide. Well, that's not going to matter. Every time that such a program has been implemented by any country in the world's history, it has led to some combination of genocide, ethnic cleansing, tyrant state, all sorts of bad things that you don't want. Look at, again, East Germany, Nazis, Pol Pot, Stalin. You can look at quite a few different countries and regions throughout various periods of time, and they all seem to have the same end result. The reason they have the same end result is people get afraid of some foreign threat. The government then uses that as an excuse to take their freedom away and solidify its power. I believe it was Goebbels, the propaganda minister of Nazi Germany, who said something along that line. That it doesn't matter what type of government it is, it doesn't matter whether it's a one-party state or a dictatorship or a democracy, all you gotta do is tell people they're being attacked, make them afraid, and then say, oh, we can help, here, we'll have some more government. And I believe it was Reagan who said the scariest thing you can hear, and selling along the lines of the scariest thing you can hear is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Now, I'm not a conservative, but that is basically true in regards to social issues, especially with something like terrorism. I feel safer. I would feel safer if we simply armed the entire populace and gave everybody in the country martial training, or martial arts training of some sort, than having all of these domestic drones and cameras and programs to spy on people. Why? Because 99% of the time the terrorists are going to fail anyway. The country is simply too large, too well-armed, and too populated for most terrorists to be able to make a dent in the population. We should class terrorism as just another form of nutty, psychopathic crime, prosecute it in regular courts, and be done with it. If someone's suspected of terrorism, then go ahead and get a real, honest-to-goodness warrant by an elected judge. And then go after them, because the Constitution allows that to happen. Don't use some secret, underhanded court, nobody knows who's on it or how it functions, to issue blanket warrants on the entire population, and they say, well, Obama's going to try to show people that these programs are necessary and help keep them safe. That's going to be hard to do because they're so secretive they can't release any information about how they function other than what's being leaked. All we know is that they're looking through absolutely everything in an online form. I wouldn't be surprised if now they don't even need a warrant to go through your mail. People say, well, I'm just going to switch back to snail mail. Well, even that might not be safe. Snowden could come out tomorrow and say, oh, by the way, they're going through the U.S. mail service, scanning every document into a massive archive. It could be happening. You wouldn't have any way of knowing it. Just the agents would come in and say, oh, shut up, don't tell anybody about this, it's classified. If you do, you go to Gitmo for the next 50 years. It's ridiculous. It's a waste of money. It's probably not effective. And it's just fear-mongering. People are terrified of some illiterate dude over in the desert with a camel semen-laced bomb. Ibn al-Sharmuta over there is not a threat. He's living on the other side of the ocean. What's he going to do? Come over here and detonate a couple plastic explosives? Yeah, he might. Let him do that and then air him out. You know, bury him in a pigskin blanket, something like that. You don't need to surveil the entire population to be safe. And you're never going to get complete safety anyway. You can't ever achieve it. You'll never have a country which is 100% safe. You're much more likely to get killed by a police officer accidentally or because they're drunk or something than you are by a terrorist. By far, you're more likely to get killed by a cop. Friendly fire, a cop just goes crazy, situation escalates, whatever the case may be. You're more likely to get raped, you're more likely to get stabbed, you're more likely to get into a car accident. We should ban assault cars because car accidents are a leading cause of death, so we might as well ban them as well. It doesn't make any sense. You can't have all the corners of society rubbed off and smoothed out and covered in carpet so nobody bangs their head. They try to do that in Europe. It doesn't work. Any society they try it in, inevitably it leads to tyranny.